The chamber was huge, brighter than any human eye was used to. Light floated in the air, not from lamps or suns, but from the walls themselves. The air shimmered faintly, and every sound echoed as if the room itself was alive. Around the great circular hall sat the representatives of 100 alien civilizations, each one seated in their own light ring. Their shapes were strange. Some tall and thin like trees, others round and pulsing. Some with eyes that glowed and skin that rippled with color. They all turned their gaze to the small group standing in the center. At the heart of it all stood the humans. Only 4 of them had been allowed inside. Ambassador James Hale, calm but tired, stood at the front, wearing a dark uniform with a small Earth emblem near his shoulder. Beside him was Colonel Mira Vance, dressed in the deep gray of the United Earth Defense Command. 2 aides stood behind them, silent and watchful. The hum of voices fell silent as the council chair spoke. Its voice was smooth and deep, echoing from every side. Species 947, known as humanity. You stand accused of violating the Galactic Treaty of Peace. You have deployed armed fleets beyond your assigned sector. You have interfered in the internal affairs of the Verthal Syndicate. Do you deny this? James Hale took a slow breath. The words hung heavy in the air. Every being in that chamber was waiting to see how the humans would react. Hale looked around at the circle of lights, at the hundreds of alien eyes fixed on him. He could feel their curiosity, their arrogance, and their quiet fear. We do not deny, Hale said softly. His voice carried across the chamber, quiet but clear. But we will explain. Murmurs rose around the hall, some sharp, others mocking. A few voices demanded immediate punishment. The chair raised a long, thin limb for silence. Explain? You violated a treaty older than your species' first engine. What explanation can you offer that justifies such action? Before Hale could speak again, Mira stepped forward. Her eyes were calm, but her stance was that of a soldier ready for anything. If you will permit us, we can show you, she said. The chair tilted its glowing head. Show us? Yes, she said. Not words, proof. For a moment, the council whispered among themselves in languages that sounded like air hissing through glass. Then with a soft pulse of light, the chair agreed. Proceed. Mira pressed a small control on her wrist. The floor beneath her shimmered, and a hollow field rose into the air. The image came alive above the chamber, a scene from space. It was dark and vast, the stars scattered like ice across black water. The alien delegates leaned forward. The view zoomed in. Ships, human ships, moved through the darkness. Sleek, gray, and silent, they drifted in precise formations. Against them were the Verthal raiders, their ships twisted and organic, glowing with plasma energy. The raiders were larger, faster, and outnumbered the humans 3-1. The outcome should have been certain, but it was not. The human fleet moved like a single mind. Without central AI guidance, without external commands, the ships shifted and adjusted as if they could sense danger before it appeared. Every movement was timed perfectly. When the enemy fired, the humans were already gone. When they attacked, it was not chaos. It was rhythm. A soft gasp rose from the council seats. Alien eyes widened as they watched the human ships break through enemy lines using gravitational eddies, asteroids, and debris. They did not fight like other species. They adapted faster, learned quicker, and made decisions that seemed impossible. In the corner of the image, one could see the flagship. Inside, human officers moved swiftly between stations. Orders were short, clear, and direct. Every soldier seemed to understand without question, not because of control, but because of trust. When the footage ended, silence filled the chamber. No one spoke for a long time. The alien leaders looked at one another. Some whispered. Others simply stared at the humans as if trying to understand what they had just seen. The chair finally spoke. That was not artificial intelligence. No, Mira said. That was training. Impossible, another voice boomed from the far seats. No species can coordinate with that precision without central automation. Hale met the alien's eyes. Humans can. We have learned through necessity. The room erupted in sound. Hundreds of voices spoke at once, debating, accusing, fearing. The chair slammed a glowing limb on the console, silencing them again. You claim that you sent such forces to defend? From what? Hale turned his gaze to the center of the chamber. From extinction, he said quietly. The Verthal Syndicate raided colonies outside their sector. They enslaved civilians, burned habitats, and broke council law. The council did not act. We did. Mira stepped forward again. We did not invade. We liberated, and we withdrew when it was done. A long silence followed. The chair's eyes pulsed slowly, its voice colder now. You have made yourselves judge and executioner. That is not the council's way. Hale nodded slightly. We noticed. The alien delegate shifted uncomfortably. The calm defiance in his tone unsettled them more than open anger ever could. The chair leaned closer. Do you understand what you risk, human? You stand before the greatest collective power in the galaxy. You defied it. Hale looked straight at the chair. With respect, we do not fear power. We respect it when it is used with wisdom. But when it fails to protect the weak, then it is not power. It is failure. A ripple of shock moved through the hall. No one had ever spoken to the council that way. Even Mira felt the air grow heavier. The chair's form brightened dangerously. You speak boldly for one whose world is unarmed before us. Mira's voice broke the tension. You misunderstand, counselor. Earth does not stand unarmed. It stands prepared. The words fell like stone. The room froze. Another delegate from a crystalline world clicked nervously. Prepared? You mean you plan for war? Mira looked at the images still hanging faintly in the air. The human ships, the soldiers, the precision. No, she said quietly. We plan for survival. The chair turned toward the glowing walls where other council members whispered their judgments. You claim defense, yet your forces act like conquerors. You claim restraint, yet your tactics speak of mastery and destruction. You call yourselves peaceful, yet your armies move like predators. Hale sighed softly. That is because you are seeing soldiers. You have not yet met professionals. The chamber lights flickered. Every alien leaned forward, unsure if they had heard correctly. Professionals. The word was simple, but the weight in Hale's tone made it sound dangerous. The chair's voice softened slightly. Explain this word. What is a professional army in human terms? Mira answered. An army trained not only to fight, but to think. To act with discipline, not emotion. To win wars by preventing them. Every soldier you saw has studied every major conflict of our history. We don't just learn from victory. We learn from every mistake we ever made. We learned what happens when power has no purpose. For a moment, even the chair said nothing. The quiet stretched until it felt endless. Then in a colder tone, it spoke again. Such an army cannot exist without danger. You have created something beyond control. Hale's expression did not change. That's why we control ourselves. The council members began to argue among themselves again. Some shouted for sanctions. Others wanted more proof. Only a few, watched the humans with quiet respect. Finally, the chair called for silence. We will deliberate. Humanity will remain under observation until judgment is passed. If you move your fleets again, your world will face consequences beyond your imagination. Mira bowed slightly. Then we imagine a great deal. The humans were escorted out. As they walked through the long corridor of light, Hale finally spoke, his voice low. You know they will not trust us after this. Mira nodded. They don't have to. They just have to remember. He looked at her. Remember what? That Earth never starts wars, she said, her eyes steady. But we finish them. Behind them, the massive chamber closed like a sun fading from view. The council began its secret vote. Some wanted punishment, some demanded control, and some, those who had truly watched the footage, sat in silence, realizing something that chilled them. Humanity was not dangerous because of its weapons. It was dangerous because of its understanding. Because every soldier it sent carried not just orders, but history, logic, and empathy. And somewhere, deep inside the council's great halls, fear began to grow, not of what humans had done, but of what they might do if they were ever truly provoked. The galaxy had seen soldiers before, but this was the first time it had seen professionals. The night over Earth was quiet, but inside the command complex under the Atlantic, the lights never went out. Deep under layers of steel and rock, General Arik Nolan stood before a large display wall showing hundreds of tiny lights spread across the galaxy. Each light represented a human ship stationed far from home. His face was calm, but his hands were clasped tightly behind his back. He had just received the message from Ambassador Hale. The Council had voted to begin sanctions against Earth. Trade routes were being closed, communications restricted, and the Council had demanded that all human fleets return home for supervision. Nolan read the short message again. It ended with only 2 words. They fear us. He said nothing for a while. Around him, officers waited quietly. Finally, he turned and spoke. They fear what they do not understand. That was always going to happen. A young officer asked softly, Sir, should we recall the fleets? Nolan looked at the lights again. No, we will not pull back. If we show weakness now, they will take it as guilt. Let them watch us. Let them see what a professional force really looks like. He moved closer to the display. His reflection shimmered over the glowing stars. Send coded message to all commands. Maintain readiness level 3. No movement beyond patrol zones without my order. The officer nodded and began typing. Nolan continued, his voice quiet but firm. And remind them, our mission is defense, not fear. As the orders spread across the network, the humans on outposts, stations, and ships received them. Across the stars, they read the message with silent pride. No one panicked. No one complained. They simply prepared. On the moon, engineers checked launch bays. On Mars, soldiers practiced zero-gravity rescue drills. In orbit around Jupiter, fleet captains reviewed every tactical manual from the last century. Each man and woman knew what it meant. They were being tested, not in battle but in patience. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council's private chambers, the debate grew louder. The alien representatives shouted across their holographic rings, each blaming the other for the humans' defiance. They disobeyed the vote, shouted one. They are ignoring the council, cried another. They are preparing for war, hissed a third. The council chair raised its long, glowing limbs. Enough. We will send observers to confirm. Soon, small reconnaissance fleets were dispatched to human-controlled space. The ships carried stealth drones and listening probes. They moved silently, hiding in the darkness, recording every movement of the humans. The first reports returned within days. The observers watched human soldiers training in strange ways. They saw groups running obstacle courses inside rotating ships, drilling in simulated vacuum without heavy armor, fighting hand-to-hand while floating upside down. To the aliens, it made no sense. Why would a species practice battle in such difficult conditions? The reports continued. The humans' command centers were not run by artificial minds, but by humans themselves. Their decisions were fast, sometimes faster than machines could calculate. They argued, debated, and still made the right choice at the right second. There were no perfect patterns, no predictable rhythms. Everything was fluid, flexible, alive. One alien observer recorded in disbelief, "They are chaos pretending to be order." Another report came from a small planet near the frontier. It described a strange human exercise. Dozens of ships switched off all power, becoming invisible to sensors. For 6 hours they drifted in total silence, using gravity and instinct to stay in formation. When power returned, every ship was exactly where it was supposed to be. The alien analysts could not explain how. The council reviewed the reports in secret. Some members demanded an immediate strike to force disarmament. Others warned that such an attack might awaken something far worse. Ambassador Hale received a copy of the leaked surveillance data. He sat alone in his quarters aboard the diplomatic cruiser Unity. The recording showed his own people from far above, calm, precise, united. He felt both pride and sadness. He opened a channel to Earth. The hologram of General Nolan appeared before him. "They're watching us," Hale said quietly. Nolan nodded. "Good, let them. Maybe they'll learn something. They think we're preparing for conquest." Nolan's expression didn't change. "We're preparing for peace. The kind that lasts. But they've never seen peace built by strength before." Hale leaned forward. "The Council doesn't understand restraint. They only see capability as threat. If they panic, we could face a united embargo. Worse, military action." Nolan's eyes were calm. "Then they'll learn another lesson about humans. We don't start wars because of fear, but we end them if we must." After the transmission ended, Hale sat in silence. Outside the ship's window, a distant planet turned slowly, its surface covered with blue oceans and white clouds. Earth looked peaceful from afar, but he knew how fragile peace always was. Back on the Council homeworld, tension grew. Every major network broadcasted debates about humanity. Some called them reckless primitives. Others called them a miracle of adaptation. The leak of training footage had spread across half the galaxy. And for the first time, even ordinary citizens of other species saw how humans fought. In the markets of the Viren system, traders whispered about Earth's fleets. On the cold moons of Kor, soldiers watched the videos in silence. In the archives of the old empires, scholars wrote the same question. How could a young species master war so completely? In the middle of this uproar, the council chair summoned a private meeting with the elder advisors. We face a paradox, it said. If humanity fights for peace, they are noble. But if they fight too well, they will rule by fear. Either path leads to chaos. One of the advisors replied, then perhaps it is not humanity that is the problem. Perhaps it is us who forgot what real defense looks like. The chair did not answer. It only stared at the holographic image of Earth, glowing faintly against the stars. Back on Earth, General Nolan walked through the lower training levels of the command complex. Soldiers were working in small groups, adjusting exosuits, calibrating drones, and running silent drills. He watched as two young cadets practiced navigation exercises, predicting enemy movements without using computers. He stopped beside them. Tell me, he asked, how do you know where the enemy will move? One of them replied, we imagine what we would do if we were them. Nolan smiled faintly. That's the answer. Remember, machines predict patterns. Humans predict emotions. That's why we win. As he walked away, the cadet whispered to her partner, he makes it sound simple. It is simple, the partner replied, but it's not easy. Above them, in orbit, Earth's main defense fleet glided silently across the dark. Each ship bore the mark of the blue planet on its hull. Every crew member knew that at any moment the Council could order them to stand down. But none of them feared it. They trusted their commanders, their training, and most of all each other. One evening, as Nolan reviewed reports in his office, his assistant entered with a data pad. Sir, the Council just released another statement. They're accusing us of hiding weapons research. Nolan didn't look up. We aren't hiding anything. They just don't understand what they're seeing. The assistant frowned. What are they seeing, sir? He finally looked up. A mirror. And they don't like what's looking back. In the following weeks, the situation grew worse. The Council placed new patrols near human borders. Freighters were stopped and searched. Communication delays increased. Every move was designed to pressure Earth into submission. But the humans stayed silent. They did not respond with threats or speeches. They simply continued to work, to build, and to prepare. Then one day, a secret message arrived on Earth from an unknown source. It was short, written in plain words. They are planning a blockade. Vote expected within 7 cycles. Nolan read it twice, then turned to his advisors. We have 7 cycles to make them understand who we are, he said. How do we do that, sir? One asked. He looked toward the stars on the screen. We show them discipline. No anger, no panic, just precision. If they push, we don't break. That's how they'll know what a professional army truly is. And so the waiting began. Across the galaxy, humanity held its breath while the Council decided its fate. In the silence between worlds, unseen by the watching probes, human ships drifted like patient hunters, not aggressive, not afraid, just ready. In the deep halls of the Galactic Council, some whispered that maybe, just maybe, Earth was not the threat they feared. But others saw something else, something older and colder. A species that had learned to control violence instead of being ruled by it. General Nolan watched the stars from his dark command room. He knew that history was turning again, and as he stood there, he said quietly to himself, let them come. We'll show them the meaning of control. Far above him, the satellites continued their silent orbit. The blue planet slept below, unaware that somewhere in the galaxy, the most powerful civilizations were about to learn just how calm a storm could look before it broke. The news spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, every network played the same footage, the leak that no one was supposed to see. The screens showed human soldiers in black combat suits moving through broken cities on a training world. The video was clear and raw, taken from above by an unknown source. In the footage, the soldiers moved with strange unity. They didn't speak much, yet they knew what the others were thinking. Their movements were fast but careful, their lines perfect even in chaos. When one soldier fell, 2 others moved instantly to cover. When their commander raised a single hand, 50 soldiers stopped moving at once. Every alien who watched it felt the same thing: unease. The humans looked too calm, too precise. There was no rage in their eyes, no wild shouting like in the battles of other species. They looked like they were working, not fighting. By the end of the footage, silence filled the galaxy's communication channels. The words began appearing on every forum, every newsline, every broadcast. The human army. On the Council's homeworld, crowds of alien citizens gathered outside the great halls. Some demanded that humanity be punished before it was too late. Others whispered that maybe humans could protect them from worse threats. The galaxy was divided. Ambassador James Hale stood inside his quarters on the Unity, watching the same video play on his screen. His reflection looked tired, older than he was. The leak had done what no war could. It made the galaxy afraid of Earth without a single shot fired. He turned when Colonel Mira Vance entered the room. She looked as composed as always, though her uniform was wrinkled from long hours of work. "They've seen it," Hale said quietly. Mira nodded. "Everywhere," he sighed. "They think we wanted this." "They always think we want power," she replied. "They don't understand discipline. They won't understand it until it's too late." Mira looked out the viewport, where a thin crescent of Earth shone against the black. "Do you remember the Academy's motto?" she asked. Hale smiled faintly. "Strength with purpose." "That's what they don't see," she said. "They see strength. They never see the purpose." In the council chamber, the storm had begun. Representatives shouted over one another. Some waved datapads filled with statistics, claiming humanity's armies were larger than allowed. Others demanded that all human ships be disarmed. The chair finally called for silence. "We have allowed them to grow unchecked," it said in a slow, heavy voice. "Their technology advances faster than any model predicts. Their discipline is unmatched. And now their image spreads fear among every citizen. This cannot continue." A delegate from the Solarn Dominion rose. "Fear can bring order," he said. "Maybe the humans are the reminder we all need that peace requires strength." The chair glared at him. "Peace built on fear is no peace at all." But as the debate raged, the galaxy's outer sectors were growing restless. Far from the Council's world, in the red light of a dying star, the Kavrak's Dominion gathered its fleets. The Kavraks had always hated the Council's control. Now, with everyone focused on the humans, they saw their chance. Within days, the Kavraks invaded 3 border systems. Entire colonies fell before the Council even realized what was happening. Their warships were huge and brutal, firing without warning, enslaving entire populations. When the news reached the Council, panic followed. Fleets were sent, but the Council's admirals were not used to real war. They hesitated, argued over jurisdiction, and fought without unity. The Kavraks crushed them easily. In the middle of that chaos, Hale was called before the emergency session. The holographic lights of the Council flickered as the chair spoke. "Ambassador of Earth," it said, "you claimed your fleets act for defense. Then defend." Hale looked around at the alien faces staring down at him. "You want our help now?" "We demand it," said one delegate angrily. "The Kavraks threaten us all." Hale's voice stayed calm. "And when it's over? When we win? Will you call us criminals again?" The chair's light pulsed coldly. "Do not mistake necessity for respect, human. You will act under Council command." Hale met its glowing eyes. "No, if we fight under our own command. You've seen what happens when others try to direct us. We are effective because we are free to adapt." The chamber filled with noise again. Some shouted in agreement, others in anger. The chair finally said, "Then Earth will act on its own risk. If you fail, we will not protect you." Hale bowed slightly. "We never expected you to." When he left the chamber, Mira was waiting in the corridor. "They've called your bluff," she said. He smiled faintly. "They think it's a bluff." Back on Earth, General Arik Nolan received the authorization signal. He gathered his staff in the command room, where the great display now showed the spread of the Kavraks' fleets. Their red markers covered half a dozen sectors. "They've started a war," Nolan said simply, "and the Council's falling apart." One of his officers asked, "Do we intervene, sir?" He looked at the display for a long time. "We don't intervene," he said. "We correct." The next few hours were a blur of quiet, efficient movement. Orders were sent. Fleets began to move. No speeches, no fanfare, no announcements. The human armada left orbit silently, like shadows in the dark. In the control center, Nolan stood before the main screen. "Activate strategic blackout," he ordered. All communications from the fleet went dark. Even the Council's intelligence networks couldn't track them. They were gone, completely invisible. Across the galaxy, the Kavrak's fleets advanced toward the core worlds. They destroyed everything in their path. The Council tried to gather forces, but their ships were scattered, their commanders confused. Then, one night, as alien broadcasts filled the networks with reports of disaster, something changed. A faint transmission appeared on the Kavrak's military channels. It lasted only seconds. A voice spoke in simple words: "Wise contact made. Operation in progress." The Kavrak's admirals were confused. Before they could react, their outer fleets vanished from sensors. One after another, their ships were disabled, their engines cut, their formations torn apart by precision strikes. The attacks came from nowhere. No one could detect the human ships until it was too late. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Colonel Mira Vance stood before the observation window. The enemy fleet burned quietly below. "No waste," she said softly to her crew. "No cruelty. Just precision." Reports came in from across the war zone. Human ships coordinated without delay, striking like a single mind. They used asteroids for cover, gravity wells for acceleration, even enemy wreckage as shields. Every maneuver had purpose. Back at the Council, alien leaders watched live feeds from distant probes. What they saw made them fall silent. Human ships were fighting an entire empire and winning. The chair whispered, "This is not war. This is orchestration." In one battle, a human destroyer intentionally rammed a Kavrak's carrier to block its escape path, sacrificing itself to save civilians below. The moment was replayed across the galaxy. The alien commentators could not understand it. Why would a commander order such a thing? An old historian from a distant world answered softly, "Because humans fight for more than survival. They fight for meaning." As the battles continued, something strange happened. The human fleets began broadcasting signals on open channels, not of threats but of peace. They told enemy soldiers to surrender, promising safety and medical help. Thousands did. When the war finally reached its end, the Kavrak ships retreated into the dark, shattered and silent. The Council's fleets arrived days later, only to find the war already over. The humans were rebuilding the damaged colonies, setting up aid stations, and helping alien survivors. Not one city was occupied. Not one flag was planted. In the council chamber, the chair watched the reports in disbelief. Hale stood calmly before them. "It's done," he said simply. The chair's voice was quiet. "You defeated the Kavraks in less than 40 hours. "Our forces trained for worse," Hale replied. "You could have conquered them all," another delegate said. "Why didn't you?" Hale looked around the chamber. "Because we're not conquerors. We're professionals." Mira, standing behind him, added, "We don't destroy unless we must. We rebuild what others break. That's what we are." For a moment, no one spoke. The galaxy, which had feared humans for their strength, now saw something far more complex: strength under control. But even as the council began to understand, whispers spread among the outer systems. Some saw humans as heroes. Others saw them as a new empire in waiting. And far away, deep in the cold dark beyond the mapped stars, unseen eyes watched the transmissions and began to plan. Humanity had shown its power, and the galaxy had taken notice. The storm was over, but something greater was beginning. The sky over the council world was filled with strange silence. For the first time in centuries, the chambers were quiet. The war with the Kavrak's dominion had ended, but the cost was heavier than anyone wanted to admit. Whole sectors were in ruins, fleets were lost, and millions were dead. Yet the humans had done what no one else could. They had stopped the invasion in less than 2 days. Ambassador James Hale stood in front of the large windows of the council tower, watching the city lights far below. He could see the movement of ships arriving and leaving, diplomats rushing to secret meetings, and reporters shouting questions in dozens of languages. But Hale didn't move. His mind was still with the soldiers who were rebuilding the border worlds. He turned when the door opened. Colonel Mira Vance entered, her uniform still dusty from travel. She had come straight from the war front. Hale could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but also something else: quiet pride. "It's over," she said softly. Hale nodded. "You did what they said was impossible." "We did what we trained for," Mira replied. "Now they're afraid again?" He smiled sadly. "They're afraid because they don't know what to call us anymore. They can't decide if we're saviors or monsters." She walked to the window beside him. "Maybe we're both. Maybe that's what peace looks like when you earn it the hard way." Down below, the council square was filling with people. Massive screens showed images from the front lines. Human soldiers helping alien civilians, repairing water systems, sharing food. Every act of kindness made the crowd quieter. The galaxy had never seen an army like this before. Later that night, the council held an emergency session. The chamber was full, every seat glowing. The chair opened the meeting with a voice heavy with fatigue. The war is finished. The Cavrax fleets are broken. But the question remains, what now? Dozens of voices answered at once. Some praised the humans. Others demanded restrictions. The council could not agree. Finally, the chair turned to Hale. Ambassador of Earth, the council requests an explanation. How did your forces succeed where all others failed? Hale looked up, his face calm. Because we don't see war as chaos, he said. We see it as a problem to solve. A delegate asked sharply, and how do you solve it? Mira stepped forward. By understanding it. Every soldier in our army is trained to think, not just obey. We fight with discipline, not rage. We study, we plan, and when we act, we do it fast. You call that power. We call it professionalism. The council listened, some fascinated, others uneasy. Another delegate leaned forward. And what happens when such professionalism turns against us? Hale met the alien's eyes. Then you'd better hope you've given us no reason to. The hall grew quiet again. That same night, General Eric Nolan stood in the main command room on Earth. Around him, the room buzzed with quiet energy as officers tracked every signal coming from the council world. The walls glowed faintly with data from 100 star systems. They're arguing again, Nolan said, watching the reports. They still don't know whether to thank us or fear us. His chief of staff, a tall woman named Daniels, looked up from her console. They can't control what they don't understand. Exactly, Nolan said. They think control means safety. They don't realize safety comes from preparation. He walked slowly around the table. Begin post-conflict rotation. I want every unit rested within 40 days. But keep readiness at level 2. Daniels looked up. You think they'll turn on us? Nolan shook his head. No, not yet. But they'll test us again. Fear always does. Far from Earth, the human fleet was still in motion. The soldiers who had fought the Cavrax now worked side by side with alien engineers, helping rebuild destroyed cities. The aliens were surprised by how the humans worked, silent, focused, and kind. They shared water, food, and even taught local children to play games in the dirt. One alien elder said quietly to her people, "They fight like machines but heal like saints." The galaxy began to whisper new things. Some called them the Iron Hands of Peace. Others called them the Soldiers of Silence. To many, they were no longer just humans. They were something different, something dangerous and beautiful at the same time. In the weeks that followed, strange rumors began spreading. Small colonies near the uncharted zones reported ships watching them from the dark, ships that did not belong to the Council or the Cavrax. Hale received a quiet message from one of Earth's scouts. Unknown activity near the black sectors. Possible third force. He forwarded the message to General Nolan, who studied it without expression. Of course, Nolan said softly. The galaxy never stays quiet for long. Mira visited the command center a few days later. Nolan met her in the briefing room. You've done good work, he said. You made them see what a professional army can do. They're starting to understand, Mira said, but not enough. They see our results, not our reasons. He nodded. That's always the way. Power makes people blind. Even peace makes them nervous. She hesitated, then said, What if they decide to turn against us again? What if the Council unites this time? Nolan looked at her for a long time. Then we teach them again. The same lesson, the same way. Calmly, completely. He walked to the window. Do you know what the hardest part of command is? He asked quietly. She shook her head. It's not war, he said. It's restraint. Knowing when not to use what you have. Mira thought of the battles she had seen, the moments when they could have destroyed everything but chose not to. That's what they'll never understand, she said. That our power isn't in how much we can destroy. It's in how much we refuse to. Over the next months, the Council tried to repair its image. Public broadcasts showed alien fleets joining human ships for relief missions. Treaties were rewritten, but beneath the surface unease grew. Some Council members whispered that Earth's influence was spreading too fast. Others argued that the galaxy needed humans to survive. One night, a secret vote was held. Half the council wanted to create a joint task force under human leadership. The other half demanded that all human military movements be monitored. The vote ended in chaos, no decision reached. When Hale heard about it, he only sighed. "They can't decide whether to trust us or cage us," he said to Mira. "They'll try both," she replied. He looked out at the stars. "Then we stay what we are. Not conquerors, not saviors, just professionals." Meanwhile, in the dark regions beyond council space, strange signals continued to appear. Unregistered ships drifted through dead systems, scanning wreckage from the Kavrak's war. Someone was watching. Someone was learning. General Nolan knew it. He began preparing quietly without telling the council. More training, better coordination, deeper intelligence networks. His officers worked day and night, not because of orders, but because they trusted him completely. One evening, Daniels asked him, "Sir, if another war comes, will the council stand with us?" Nolan smiled faintly. "They will if they're smart, but if not, we'll still stand." He looked at the star map again. "We always stand." In the farthest outpost of human space, a small research vessel detected a fleet moving toward known sectors. The signals were faint, but the shape of the ships was nothing like the Kavrak's. A new power was coming. The crew sent the data to Earth and waited for instructions. Back in the command center, Nolan watched the report appear on the main screen. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he turned to his staff. "Send the message to Ambassador Hale," he said. "The galaxy's about to remember us again." As he walked out of the room, he stopped and looked up at the great screen one last time. The lights of the human fleets glowed softly against the dark. They were scattered but connected, like stars held together by invisible lines. Nolan spoke quietly, almost to himself. "We fight when we must. We stop when we can. That's who we are. That's who we'll always be." On the council world, Hale received Nolan's message. He read it once, then looked at Mira. "Another storm is coming." She nodded. "Then we'll do what we always do. Stay calm. Stay ready." Hale smiled faintly. "And remind them that Earth doesn't start wars. But we finish them," Mira said softly. The stars outside seemed to shimmer as if they had heard. The galaxy was peaceful for the moment, but every being who looked toward the blue planet knew that peace existed only because the humans allowed it. They had seen what the professional army of Earth could do, and somewhere in the quiet space between worlds, that army waited, not for glory, not for conquest, but for the next time the galaxy needed to be reminded what true discipline looked like. The council chamber was full again. Every seat was taken and the air was heavy with tension. The war with the Kavrak's dominion was over, but the memory of it still burned in the minds of all who had survived. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned back a fleet that had crushed entire civilizations. They had fought with speed, precision, and a kind of control the galaxy had never seen before. Now everyone wanted to understand how. Ambassador James Hale sat at the long table in the center of the chamber, his face calm as always. He could feel every eye on him. Across from him stood the council chair, tall and pale, her eyes glowing faintly under the chamber lights. Around her, the representatives of more than 100 worlds whispered to one another, their voices low and uncertain. "The council recognizes Earth," the chair said. "You are called here to answer one question. What is your army?" Hale stood slowly. His voice was steady but quiet, each word carrying across the chamber. "Our army is what stands between order and chaos. It is not built to conquer. It is built to protect. It exists because history has taught us what happens when power goes unchecked." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates nodded, others frowned. The chair leaned forward. "You say your army is defensive, yet it destroyed fleets that have ruled the stars for ages. You use tactics no one has ever seen. How do you explain that?" Colonel Mira Vance, standing beside Hale, stepped forward. "We learn, we adapt. Every soldier in our army is trained not just to follow orders, but to think. We fight with minds as much as with weapons. We study our mistakes and turn them into strength. That is what makes us different." An alien representative, his skin like glass, stood and spoke with suspicion. "Different is dangerous. You call your army professional, but we see an army that could destroy the galaxy if it wished." Mira met his gaze calmly. "And yet we don't. That is what should frighten you the most, not our strength, but our restraint." The room fell into silence. After a long pause, the chair said, "We have seen your power, but tell us, what keeps you from using it? What stops you from taking what you could easily claim? Hale's answer was simple. Because we remember who we are. We come from a small world that learned peace only after nearly destroying itself. Every soldier carries that memory. We fight so that no one else has to learn that lesson the hard way. The words hung in the air. Many in the chamber lowered their eyes. They had seen what humanity could do. They had also seen what humanity chose not to do. Later that day, Hale and Mira walked through the quiet halls of the council tower. The great windows showed the stars burning far away, each one a reminder of how vast the galaxy was. They'll never stop fearing us, Mira said softly. Hale nodded. Maybe they shouldn't. Fear keeps them careful. But someday they'll understand. Mira looked out at the stars. And if they don't? Then we keep showing them, Hale said. Not with threats, with actions. On the outer colonies, human soldiers were still working side by side with alien engineers, rebuilding what had been destroyed. They repaired farms, built hospitals, and restored broken water systems. They worked without rest and without demand for reward. Wherever they went, the story of Earth's army changed from one of fear to one of quiet respect. An alien child watched a human soldier repair a broken energy tower and asked, "Why are you helping us?" The soldier smiled. "Because we can. That's what we do." Far away on Earth, General Eric Nolan watched the reports come in. The war was over, but the preparations never stopped. The unified planetary forces were always training, always learning. Every generation added something new, making the system stronger, smarter, more humane. He walked through the training grounds one evening as new recruits practiced silent coordination drills. They moved in perfect unison, their timing flawless. Nolan watched for a while, then turned to his second-in-command. "You see that?" he said quietly. "They're better than we were." The officer smiled. "That's the point, sir." Nolan nodded. "Good, that's how it should be. Each generation must be better than the last. Otherwise, we're not evolving. We're repeating." In the following weeks, new threats began to stir at the edges of known space. Strange signals appeared and vanished. The Council feared another war, but Hale sent a message to all sectors. "Stay calm. We are watching." The message was enough. No one dared to test Earth again. The galaxy had learned that when humans said they were watching, it meant they were already prepared. A month later, the Council held a ceremony to honor those who had fought against the Kavrak's dominion. For the first time in history, the Council invited a human general to speak before all worlds. General Nolan stood before the gathering, his uniform plain and his expression steady. He began without notes or fanfare. "Many of you wonder what makes our army what it is. You think it's our weapons, our ships, our strategies. But it's none of that. What makes us strong is trust. Every soldier trusts the one beside them completely. That's something no machine or code can replace. We trust because we have to, because we know what happens when we stop." He paused, looking around the vast hall. "The galaxy is wide and full of dangers. Some will never change. But if you learn anything from us, learn this. Strength without purpose is destruction. Power without discipline is chaos. Our army exists to make sure neither of those ever rule again." When he finished, the chamber was silent. Then slowly, the delegates began to stand. One by one, they saluted. It was the first time the Galactic Council had ever saluted a soldier from Earth. That night, as the lights of the Council world dimmed, Hale and Mira stood on the balcony of their quarters. The city below glowed like a sea of stars. Ships came and went, carrying the new message of peace to every corner of the galaxy. Mira said softly, "Do you think they truly understand now?" Hale smiled faintly. "Maybe not yet. But they will. One day they'll see what we already know, that our strength is not in fighting but in stopping the fight." The wind from the high atmosphere brushed against them. Mira looked out into the distance and whispered, "Then our job isn't finished." "No," Hale said, "it never is." In the following months, human advisors were sent to help train defense forces on dozens of worlds. Their methods were simple: communication, discipline, restraint. They didn't teach domination. They taught control. The soldiers of other races began to understand what professionalism really meant. On a small world once destroyed by the Kavraks, a group of alien soldiers trained under human instructors. At the end of their first session, the lead instructor, a quiet man named Rivera, gathered them and said, "Remember, we don't fight because we like war. We fight because someone has to protect the ones who can't. That's the only rule that matters. Those words spread far beyond that planet. They became a saying repeated in training halls across the stars. Protect, don't destroy. Years passed. The galaxy began to change. Conflicts became fewer, wars shorter, and diplomacy stronger. Humanity's presence had reshaped the way the Council thought about strength. There were still those who feared Earth, but even they had to admit that the peace held because of the humans. One quiet evening, General Nolan sat in his office on Earth, looking at a photo of the first soldiers who had stood beside him decades earlier. He smiled slightly. The galaxy no longer called them conquerors. Now they were called guardians. He turned off the lights and looked out the window at the stars. "We did it," he whispered to himself. "We showed them what a professional army truly is." Far away, on the edge of known space, human ships patrolled the borders. Their lights blinked faintly in the dark, steady and patient. They did not seek war, but they were always ready. And across the galaxy, countless beings slept peacefully, unaware that somewhere out there the soldiers of Earth were awake, standing watch. They were not gods, not monsters, not saviors. They were human. Calm, disciplined, and prepared, the galaxy had finally realized the truth. Humanity's professional army was not built to conquer worlds. It was built to protect them, and in doing so it had changed the stars forever.